All right, so we are here with Red Ryder, and this is Anita Leonard, and the interview is going to be, this oral history interview is going to be for George Mason University Public History Project, and it's based on the National Endowment for the Humanities Public Programs Division's grant opportunity. So this is a digital project for the public, and I'd like to find out as much as we can from Red Ryder during World War II at Mesa del Rey Flight School in King City, what his experiences were, what he remembers, and how he got there. So let's start with introducing everyone who's here, and then if you could tell us about yourself, and then what was your journey getting to Mesa del Rey Flight School. So we have Red Ryder and your wife.
Red Ryder. This is my daughter, Susan Newman.
Okay.
John Jernigan.
And I'm Karen Jernigan from King City.
John Leonard from Salinas.
Janelle Garnett, I'm Red's daughter from Salinas.
And I'm Chris Ryder, Red's son. I'm from Redding, California.
Thank you.
And this is with permission, correct?
This is with your permission.
Oh, of course.
That you can make this public, so everyone can hear about this place.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So tell us about yourself first, where you were born, and what you did before the flight school.
I was born behind the governor's mansion in Sacramento. In the alley, somebody had apartments, I guess, and I'm sure we were on the lower floor, maybe the basement. But started there. I lived in various towns in Mount Shasta, Dixon, Newcastle, and wound up in San Mateo, where I graduated high school. And at that time I was working for Jack Simonic in Progressive Air Service at Mountain View, that little airport. To get this all started, my grandpa took me out to what is now Executive Airport in about 1928. And he spoiled my whole life. He introduced me to airplanes. That was it. I thought for a while about being a cowboy, but that got kind of dirty, so airplanes were better. So when the war came along, we had to move to Ely, Nevada. They wouldn't let us fly civilian airplanes here. And I started flying in Redding, just about where Chris lives now, in a Taylor Cub, not a Piper Cub, it was a Taylor Cub, 40 horse. And Simonic had Cubs and fleets, and we had a few different aircraft there, so I got to fly quite a few different airplanes. And when we went to Ely, I was maintaining the three aircraft for the students from San Jose State and Santa Clara University. And I got kind of itchy, and I decided to leave Jackson Point and went to Sparks, Nevada, and we bought a little airplane, three of us, and I forget the names of the other two guys, but we had an interstate cadet, and I was building up time. I wanted to get my commercial, so I had acquired about 220 hours, something like that, and I heard that the Navy wanted flight instructors. So I got to San Francisco and went through the process that they had available. And when I just about got through, medics called me in and had me, they wanted to see how I could walk, so I walked, and they said, well, it's all right. I guess it was because of I had polio or something when I was a kid, and then my spine was twisted a little bit. Anyway, they said, well, he would be accepted. So the psychiatrist said, why do you want to be an instructor? And I said, well, I want to get in this thing. And they said, wouldn't you rather be a fighter pilot than a flight instructor? And I said, oh, yeah. So he said, well, we'll just forget about the commission, but we can get you in the cadet program. My number one of my big mistakes in my life. But anyway, I enlisted, and took about three or 4 months before I was called back to duty. And got pre-flight at St. Mary's University. And they told us if we completed this course, we would have the equivalent of 2 years of college work. That was kind of a little bit exciting, and I liked that. Primary pre-flight was good. It got us in condition, physically anyway. Then I was thought that I might get a primary flight someplace in California, but they wound up and sent me to Pasco, Washington, and I envisioned beautiful pine trees in Oregon as a wonderful country. I woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning up there, and I couldn't see anything but one damn old tree that had been run into several times right in the middle of the airport. But anyway, I got through primary there, and then went to Corpus Christi, and Navy. I was about finished with secondary training at Corpus, and the Navy sent out a letter that we had to sign up for a 6-year term after being commissioned, or take a discharge. So I happened to think about the guys that I knew from Palo Alto Airport, Harry White. I called them and asked them if they needed any instructors. By that time, I had around 500 hours or something. And he said, "Yeah, we do. Well, come on up." So there were 3 or maybe half a dozen of us that resigned at Corpus, and a friend of mine and I went up there, and poor old guy, his name was Robinson, which my wife was familiar with. And anyway, he just didn't fit into the program, so I don't know whatever wound up with him, but I was accepted as a flight instructor there, and in August in '43, Mesa del Rey, the country club of the West Coast Training Command. And that was a beautiful place. If I'd have been a cadet, I would have really liked it. And I enjoyed the time that I spent there, and I saw a lot of people that I'd known in Ely and earlier on. And Charlie Brown was a Czech pilot. And I met Elmore Brown and his brother Bill, and I bought a motorcycle from Brownie's brother Bill. And got to know quite a few of the people around there, and I really liked them. And I liked the whole aspect of that flight training. It was a good program.
Now so you started in August 1943. Do you remember the day when you arrived? You said it was a beautiful place, and what happened, or do you remember the day when you started?
Well, just I think it was in the evening when we got there, and another guy and I had to find a room. And so we spent most of our day. It was hard to find a place to live in King City. A whole bunch of people were there from Fort Ord and then Mesa del Rey. And there were a lot of people already employed by Mesa del Rey at that time. And it started out with just 30 cadets and 12 instructors. And it got up to, there were over 300 cadets and 120 instructors at peak.
So the instructors lived in town. They did not live in the barracks and at Mesa?
I don't know if any of it lived on the base at all. There was a little, where I lived was a little group of houses down at the south end of the airport that were available, and I finally got one of those. They were regular little individual houses. So I lived there for a while.
Do you remember the street name?
I don't even remember the street going out past the airport. What is it?
Karen must know. The street.
Bitterwater.
Bitterwater. That's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, it was right on Bitterwater.
Okay.
Right at the end of the street there.
So how was a day, a regular day at Mesa del Rey? What was a routine for instructors or cadets?
Cadets, it was tough. They had a tough physical regimen, and that was split in two. They had an upper class and a lower class, and you had every other week, as I remember, you went from a morning training session till noon, and then the afternoon started another training session with another class. So we worked essentially half a day as far as actually instructing, and started out with just our regular old American kids showing up. Some of them were awestruck, some of them were overconfident, and some of them were like me that didn't know what the hell was going on, but let's have it, whack at it. Yeah. So that's about what it was.
So there was no prerequisite. They could just come and become pilots. Or was there any requirement for these cadets?
That was nothing to do with the instructors. That was all cared for by the Army.
Sure.
It was the Army Air Corps then. It wasn't the Air Force. We had to. I found out after we got there we had to enlist in the Army Reserve program, so we wouldn't be drafted. And I did that, and I forget a couple, 3 classes there. I think I was there just about a year, and they started closing the schools because they had a good regiment of pilots, with a lot of pilots already trained. So they were reducing the primary flight schools, but the Army was taking them over. And anyone over 26 would be accepted into the Army. And as I remember, it was as a ferry pilot or as a flight instructor at some of the Army bases. If you were under 26, your best option was to become an Army Air Corps cadet. I was under 26, so I had to start over. They called me to active duty in December of 1944. I already had that one.
So active duty, 1944 December. What did that mean for you?
Terrible.
Yeah.
I had to go to basic Army training. I mean, like I didn't do anything. How to put your shoes on and all of that mess. And then the pre-flight, and then primary flight training, and then I got to basic, and the war ended. And we finally got out, but they were trying to make us be street sweepers or something, and what was Louisiana's governor? What was it? The guy makes me disgusted. I can't remember the name of the governor of Louisiana that was notorious.
Yes,
We'll look it up. We'll search it up for sure. I wouldn't know the name.
Anyway, his nephew was one of the an ex-flight instructor that was in the group that I was with. And he said, "You guys want to get out of this mess?" And they did. So he said, "Put up $10 and I'll send a telegram." So we did that, and he sent a telegram to this guy, and within 2 days we received notice that we could accept the discharge.
Wow.
So that put me back where I could be a whole person again.
So let's just take a step back. The cadets who were trained there, what happened to them after their training? When they were finished with the school, were they deployed to the Pacific, or did you know as an instructor?
Oh, they went then to, this was primary. Mesa del Rey was primary flight school.
Okay.
They got about 40 hours of flight training.
Okay.
They went then to an Army base, which was basic training. And they got probably another at least 40 hours in a heavier aircraft. And then they went to advanced, which was another 3 months at least. And they got their advanced training. And by that time they were probably advised as to whether they would, what type of aircraft they would be flying, fighter, bomber, or Liaison, or whatever it might be. And then Mesa del Rey was primary flight training, but it was the primary founder of their thinking and their inclinations as to what they wanted to do later on in their training.
Now, did you keep in touch with anybody who you followed them through this journey, going out into the war or flying?
Well, no, I'm some of the instructors. Because after the war, I worked for Cliff Harris, who had been one of the instructors. He and another guy had an operation at the King City Airport, which had been acquired by the city by then. They called it King Air. I got my commercial and flight instructor's rating while I was working for him. I hadn't acquired that from the FAA until that time. And I saw the guys dusting while I was working instructing during the war, and it looked like a good job. So I got into the dusting then. finished up 40 years of that.
Yes, and that's what Barbara, I think she interviewed you regarding the history of the crop dusting business and how you followed the piloting with that. Yeah. Now, I've talked to some other people about the school, and one of them was Barbara Plaskett. Were you friends with Gordon?
Oh,
Plaskett?
yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah, Gordon.
could you tell us about that?
He was my boss, but
Yeah.
he was my friend, my best friend. I was fortunate enough to help Gordon get into the dusting business.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, Bud Henry and I were in partners, and I flew with Gordon, and we decided that he would be a good addition to our group. And he was hired by Henry Crop Dusters then. We, in our careers, worked for different companies that were in competition with each other, but Gordon and I always stayed real good friends, and he was good people.
Now, is there a story you remember from the flight instructing years, the year when you were there at Mesa del Rey? Some event or some fun memory?
There was one thing I remember was a cadet who was in an advanced flight training program, who was flying a P-38, and he buzzed the airport and landed and went over to the north end where the cliff is, rolled down. They got to him with the crash trucks and so forth, and he got up onto the strip, and he started running down the bank again. He said, "What's the matter with you?" He said, "My hat's in there." And it wasn't going off, and there was ammunition crack. He was after his hat.
Now, were there a lot of accidents during these trainings, or casualties that you remember?
I know there were some, but we had a real good record. Very, very few fatalities. Several minor incidents, nose overs. The Ryans, which was the aircraft we had when I first got there, had a real touchy brake system, and if you were anxious and tried to stop too rapidly, it would flip up on its nose. The brakes grabbed. Then when we got steermen, we had to fly them, take them out and familiarize ourselves with the airplane. We had to get 2 hours, I think, in them before we started instructing them. And I remember I had met my to-be wife by that time, and her family lived in Greenfield on that ranch down by the river. And I went over there, and I was gonna buzz him, and down there was a guy working for him as an irrigator, and he was standing there feeling up, I'll get him. So I went to him, and he turned around, saw him coming, and he threw the shovel up in the air. So I didn't get very close to it.
Wow. So how did you meet, if I can ask you, your wife that time? How did you guys meet?
She worked at the airport in the records keeping of the Form 1A and so forth. Then they had a dance at the end of one of the classes, and we got together there and became man and wife not too long after that.
So you said there was a dance at the end of the class. Did you have a formal graduation ceremony for each class? How long were these classes? How many weeks did the classes last? So 8 to 10 weeks, or do you remember?
It seemed to me that they were there for about 3 months altogether. A little under 3 months, I think, from their being lower classmen to upperclassmen.
So how did this graduation ceremony look like? What was it?
Oh, the thing that they, same kind of thing that they had a dance band and no formal thing for the cadets other than trying to find a date. But it was just a nice gathering of officer personnel and all the other people that wanted to attended these dances.
And where were these dances held? Were they in
airport.
At the airport?
Yeah.
In the main?
It was in one of the hangars.
Okay.
Right.
Now, you talked about Gordon Plaskett, Fred Carter. Did you work with him as well?
Yeah, Fred was there, and some of the guys that I knew, the Gordon wasn't there. His dad was the flight instructor. And Cy Plaskett was there.
Which is his
And
brother.
Elmore Brown and Bill Brown and Charlie Brown, who wasn't related to those two, was there. He was head of the flight instructors school when I went there. Everybody went through a little training program. They had their own training program. For instance, when I got there on my flight test, in the Navy, they had you fly smoothly, enter a turn, nice roll, and so forth. And Charlie said, you got to do it this way. And man, you turn it and go, you have to be positive. They want you to be positive. So that was a little bit of different thing that I ran into, a difference in the Navy and Army training programs. And in the Navy, every landing was supposed to be a crash landing. You stall the airplane and let it land, that was a crash. And then Army, you just put it down pretty easy. So, those are little things that I remember.
So you were flying PT-22s, right? 21s and 22s? That's what I read about.
Initially, when I first got there, it was a Ryan PT-22. Then we changed to Stearmans, which were PT-17 and 13.
Which one did you prefer?
Oh, I like the Stearman a lot better. And I got where I really liked the Stearman, because you could become part of it. And later, the last year or two, year and a half, I guess, Dusty after ADCAT, it was a good airplane, but it just didn't, it wasn't a Stearman.
Now, I have another name. There was a person who wrote up the history of Mesa del Rey, and his name is Al Tax.
Oh.
Did you know him?
Yeah.
Was he still there when you were an instructor?
Yeah, he was there then. Oh, and, he was in the office, I think. I don't remember him being on the line as a flight instructor. He might have been, but I don't remember that. Who was the guy, the last CO that married the banker's daughter there?
The banker's daughter. Karen, do you know? I have a long list of people who came and went, but it's not here with me. There's a long list. Well, I have Sagman, Frank Moore. No?
Yeah, I mean the commanding officer.
Commanding officers.
Fuller, Kelly, and
it wasn't Carter, right?
mm-mm.
No. Carter, Sagman.
This girl was the daughter of the vice president of the Bank of America, Gene. He was a Swiss or Italian guy.
Could be. There was a Rianda.
Yeah. Clegg. Barney Clegg.
Oh,
Yes.
Clegg.
Barney Clegg.
Yes.
I had his name here for you too to talk about, Clegg, because I'll be talking to somebody who knows him as well shortly, hopefully. So, what do you know about Barney Clegg?
Oh, he was the commanding officer
was the-
there
okay.
at the time I left. I didn't know him as a buddy, but I did know him, and we had met several times.
Was he from King City?
I don't believe so. I don't think so.
I guess he did stay in King City after he married.
Yeah, he did. He stayed. He did some farming someplace down there.
Now, I come across a book. It's called The Final Flight, and there's a cadet who was at Mesa del Rey in 1942, so that was probably before you, and I don't know how long he stayed. His name was Glenn Munn. Have you ever heard of him? He went on to another school, so he probably went to the basic training, but at some point he disappeared. And there's this whole book written about this story. But he started at Mesa del Rey, and he disappeared, and eventually they found him, and the plane crashed, and I forget the name now. Where was that exactly? In the
Sierras.
In the Sierras somewhere. Many years, 6 years later, maybe 5.
Marion Glacier.
Marion Glacier, that's right. So 1947, 48. You haven't heard anything about this. It was kind of a mystery going on for a while because they just went off on a flight and they were never found until 1947, 48.
Was that what out of Mather Field?
Well, he did not fly out of there, but he was a cadet at Mesa del Rey, and so the book talks about King City and flight school a little bit. But then he went on from there. I was just wondering if you may have heard of it. No.
I know there was something about some crash remains that were recovered from cadets at Mather Field. So he that might have been a base that he was transferred to.
Could have been. Could have been. Well, I'm going to open it up for other questions if you have anything regarding the King City local history or anything else.
Take a break, or do you want
All right, so now we're back from our break. Red, first of all, I just want to go back and ask you again about the beginnings of all this. When were you born? And where were you born? And your full name, because we didn't say that. It's important.
10/28/1922. Robert William Ryder.
Thank you. All right. And you were going to, I have 2 more questions at least. One is regarding your pilot's logs, because this website we're trying to put together to preserve the memory of this place will be called pilot's log. So, and you have 2 of them over there. If you could talk about it and how you used it, what you put in it, that would be great. And then maybe show a couple of pages, who else was writing in it.
Okay.
If you could talk about them. I know one was at Mesa del Rey, and the other one was back in Monday, right?
Started before.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you.
My Navy logbook is in there, but
Whereabouts there?
in the top drawer, way in the back, I think.
So which one would you like to talk about
In
first?
the bathroom, or the bedroom. She gets the right drawer.
Well, this was the first one I had.
Okay.
This was started in Reading.
Which year was this when you used this one?
1938.
1938.
Dale Fry was the instructor. And that was in that little Taylor Cub. Then I went to Montague for a few times. Every time I got my change built up to about $5 or $6, I could go and get 15 minutes flight training.
Wow. So 50 minutes was $5?
It was and the hourly rate is what I remember that they were charging was $2 an hour for the airplane. No, $5 an hour for the airplane and $2 an hour for the instructor. So $7 an hour actually. These are just build up to.
Is this it?
No.
I couldn't find anything that looked like those.
I'll
Are you in the right drawer when you got it? He said the top drawer in the back.
maybe black log.
All right. So this is a different book now. So we were just talking about how old you were when you started taking these lessons.
Just before my 16th birthday.
Just before your 16th birthday. And this is so this is your
The Navy.
Navy. Okay, what years were you here? Let's see. 1943.
Yeah.
So this was after you were done at Mesa del Rey?
No, this was before.
Was before. Oh, that's right, May 1943. So then self and solo. So these are the names of the pilots who were flying with you, right?
They were probably passengers.
Passengers, I see. So what was, all right, so tell me more about this. What do you remember from this year? This seems like 1943.
Oh, this is where Pasco and Corpus Christi.
Okay.
And the airplanes were at Pasco were flying Germans and 2S's, they call them.
So when you had passengers, who were they?
These were, let me see.
Lieutenant?
Oh, these were instructors.
Instructors, I see.
Yeah. It says designated passenger after a while in there. But then it gives you the various up checks and the different bases.
And then the hours of flight, right?
Yeah.
Now, how were you graded? How were you assessed on this?
Up or down?
Up or down? Pass, no pass,
Yeah.
right?
You get much more down here.
Interesting.
You want some more coffee? I don't think
Now,
so.
that's another question I have. Some of the King's logs, the log books, they have pages dedicated to eliminates, people who were, cadets who were eliminated. What do you know about that? What would cause a cadet to be eliminated?
One cadet that I had was physically fine, but every time we would come into land, he would vomit.
Oh.
He got airsick. And he was actually doing pretty well on the flying, but they had to eliminate him. He eliminated himself. He told me, sir, he said, I just can't stand this anymore. And he felt real badly about it, but he didn't eliminate, he wasn't eliminated because of inability. It was just a physical thing with him that he became ill. And some of them that I know just were people that either they didn't care enough or they didn't have the physical senses to be able to accept and really take in the training effort that was made for them. You know, they would always say you could train a monkey to fly, but you can't train them to think.
That's true.
So it was, sometimes some of the kids were monkeys.
You were going to tell me about the closing of the school at Mesa del Rey in King City. How did that, were you at the closing or did you go back? What happened?
They just said that they were going to close the school and wouldn't require our services anymore.
And you were still an instructor when that happened, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was, that was it? Was it a letter or somebody came, talked to you all and?
Well, it was just an announcement they made in the squadron rooms, the ready rooms. It didn't seem to be any big thing at the time. We were beginning to know that there was a good amount of pilots had gone through training already, so that it wasn't something that was a complete surprise. It was a surprise in a way that we knew about it, but we didn't know what was going to happen. It was a disappointment.
Yeah. Anything else that maybe comes to mind? Now, one other person, before we move on to the local history.
I wish I could
Yes.
be disappointed in the way, yeah,
Yes, and you mentioned that you were disappointed in the way this happened,
after the fact.
or after the fact. What were you
They were
thinking?
treated.
Well, I thought that if instead of calling us to active duty on the lowest possible rate, that we should have been transferred into some aspect of either flight training or ferry command or something. I wouldn't have expected to be able to perform in a fighter squadron without further training. But I think it wouldn't have taken too long. I flew all right.
So you were not
we were-
offered anything else? You
Yeah.
were just let go?
Yeah, we were afforded the military courtesies of a commissioned person when we were on the base. The uniform and everything, the salute, and just as we were treated as, like I would have been a second lieutenant, but it went from that to the lowest piece of dirt that you could think of. So
Now it could
I think we were mistreated.
Yes, yeah. And I know this flight school was privately operated through the Palo Alto school, so could have been because of that. It was not officially a military school, I guess, in a sense. Is that correct?
Yeah. It was owned by a private concern and operated by the military.
Sure. So there was a connection. You could have been moved on in the military. Yeah. All right, so I was going to ask you about Mickey Musnich because he's been there throughout all the years. I think he was one of the first instructors, and he's still in the logs in the last year when you were still there. What can you tell us about him? How well did you know him?
His name was Zvonimir Jaroslavich Musnich.
Wow. That's a mouthful.
I flew with Mickey after the war. Byron Williams and I bought a UC-78. It was a twin-engine airplane, and we both got our twin-engine ratings from Mickey. He was a flight inspector for the FAA at that time. He was just a good guy, and I didn't know anything special. He helped me look for. I was gonna at one time was trying to find a place to have a little flight training program in the Soledad or Greenfield area, and he and I came down, flew around looking for places, and we never did see anything. But he was a help and said if that wouldn't be any good because of this obstacle or that obstacle and so forth. But I was associated with him off and on throughout my active flight time. So after the school closed, I didn't know Mickey before the war, but he had an operation in Salinas.
At the airport?
Oh yeah.
So were you thinking about opening your own little flight school or instructing pilots?
Yeah. But that didn't come about. I got into the dusting business. Forgot about that.
Good. Karen, would you like to?
Sure. Do you want me to go ahead here? Red, I want to ask you some questions about King City and what you remember about King City. So, what years were you in King City?
1943. And I worked up in and out of there until 1992 when I had my heart attack. I worked for Gordon after the war. After I retired, not after the war, after I retired.
But you actually lived in King City for how many years?
I didn't live in King City more than about 4 months.
Oh.
I moved to Greenfield.
Okay, so do you remember anything about the businesses in King City when you were there?
The hotel on the corner of Main and Bitter, what is it?
Broadway.
Bud's. Bud was his name. Had a hotel. They had a little bar in it.
Was it the Hotel El Camino or the Reich Hotel?
Camino, I think.
El Camino? Okay.
And the bar was a little one, and every afternoon and evening it was filled with pilots and cowboys.
And did the pilots and cowboys get along?
Yeah, real well. It was Williams's cowboys primarily.
Shorty Williamson? Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you remember any other businesses down there that along Broadway or?
Yeah, there were a couple. I remember the bars more than that.
I think King City
The
used
Top Hat.
Top Hat?
And there was a Chinese restaurant next to the theater. And Rollo Mansfield had an electrical business. And the Bank of America.
Was on the corner of Broadway and 3rd.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That was where Gene Rianda was.
Right.
The restaurant where Mom worked, what was that thing called?
I don't know. And that
Creamery?
she.
The creamery on the corner, way at the end on the right street as you before
Yeah,
you made
it
a
was
left
right
turn.
where the Main Street turned to the south. There was on the south side. There was
A
a
creamery?
creamery. Yeah.
And Fred McMurray only left her a nickel? Or didn't leave her a tip?
She. Who was the
Fred McMurray, the actor.
movie personnel? That,
Fred McMurray.
Fred McMurray.
oh, okay.
He came through town?
Yeah, they were all excited. She told me this afterwards. They were all excited about him coming by. And
So, well, because Highway 101 went right through King
Yeah.
City and turned there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you remember the USO Club?
yeah,
Did you ever go there?
yeah,
Yeah? What do you remember about it?
I didn't like it.
You didn't like it? Okay. And why was that?
I think my wife-to-be was dancing with too many other guys.
So that was on right off of Broadway on Vanderhurst.
I forget the address.
Yeah, okay. So did the pilots go there quite a bit?
Yeah, the cadets primarily.
Oh, okay. So did you do anything else for entertainment while you were in town? There were bars, there was the USO Club, there was a dance once in a while.
No, that's about it, I think.
Do you ever remember going to the movie?
No, I never went to the. I went to the Greenfield Theater once in a while after we moved there, but that was a big deal.
I think you need to mention your flight under the bridge. Yeah. Tell them that one.
Well, that was on that list.
Okay.
Well, it was something I wanted to do for a long time, and this was. I was working for Atwood, and we had something to do just south of King City. I had a little job down there, and going back to this trip at Greenfield, there was an overcast. It was down pretty good. And then so I was flying up the riverbed, and I thought, well, there's the bridge. I'm going to go under the bridge. I've been wanting to do that. So I did. And when I got under there, just as I got under there, I saw there was a wire under a phone line going across under the bridge. So I ducked under that and got through and pulled up and went on. I looked back and there were a couple of cars screeching. stopped and then they went again. But anyway, I got out of there. Because I wasn't supposed to do that.
Kind of dangerous, huh? So, I have another question here, and this is my husband's question for you. So this picture shows Mesa del Rey flying service, and there's a tower up here above the building. Do you know what this tower was for?
Yeah, it was a flight control tower. This airplane, I think George Lynch came over here with this airplane.
So,
What's the name on the pickup?
Let me see that.
Arvin something. Oh, that's an
Which
old
one?
pickup, huh? That one right there.
I'll take a picture of it.
Okay. So the flight control tower was what radioed all the airplanes that came in?
No radio.
Oh.
It was they just had a light, red or green light.
Oh. So they didn't have radio contact with the people that were flying, like they did later on. They just flashed a light, huh? Interesting.
A-R.
Yeah, it got real interesting.
A-R-V-I-N.
About
Arvin Air.
30 or 40 airplanes.
It's Arvin Air.
Arvin Air.
Arvin Air?
Yeah.
Arvin Air.
Okay.
It's a bigger on the plane.
So my husband says that he's heard about a place called the Loft in King City where a lot of soldiers went. Do you remember that place, the Loft? No, okay. So,
That could have been the guys from Hunter Liggett. That way.
so also during World War II, did King City do blackout rules and spotters who watched for Japanese airplanes?
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. I'm sure.
Do you remember anything like that happening?
I think by the time I got there, I think it might have been over with at the time I got there.
Done with that. Everybody had to keep their window shades down and turn their lights off.
I know that's what we did at Mountain View.
Oh, okay. Okay, and also out at the airport in King City, do you remember some horseshoe-shaped
Revetments.
bunkers
They
or
were
levees?
revetments.
What were they called?
Revetments.
Revetments.
Yeah, and they put an airplane in there to shield it from bomb blasts.
Ah. Were there quite a few of them, or one or two? Do you remember?
I don't remember more than maybe 4 or 5. I really don't remember. I didn't pay that much attention. They were put in there when the Navy was there.
Oh, so not when you were there. Okay, when Navy was there. So they were still concerned then about a possible attack and needing a
Apparently
place
so.
for the Navy was there. Okay, do you remember anything else about King City that stays in your mind that you can recall?
No, it just was a teeming with military personnel. It was between ranching and army. That was about the extent of what was happening there.
So they closed. You said they closed down the school. Do you remember the date or the month and year that happened?
The date that I left was September in '44.
September 44. And
But I don't know the exact date of the closing because there was another class that was being finished up.
after that,
Yeah.
one more class that went
Yeah.
through. And then, do you remember the end of the war?
Yeah, but I didn't. It was such an expected thing that actually the one that we expected, and I don't think anybody really that I was associated with really celebrated or glad that with Germany that we were glad that was over with, and then we're just kind of waiting for the termination of the Japanese surrender.
Okay. Well, did you go back to King City then often after you were done with the flight school? You still worked in the agriculture aviation, so
Yeah, I worked out of there, and I didn't live there, but I worked out of the airport and helped when Gordon was had that building built on the south end of. I was with Gordon and then I worked for Gordon after I retired in 1987. I worked for Gordon till 1992, helping build, and then I kind of sometimes flew with people that were buying airplanes and checked them out, different things, little odd jobs here and there.
So when Anita and I went to the airport and looked at the history book that they had there, we saw the pictures of Fred Carter and Barney Clegg and Mickey Musnich, and there was a guy named Jack Hayes. Do you remember him?
Yeah.
Was he a cadet or was he an instructor?
Jack was from there, from King City. I think he just happened to have taken his primary training there. He was I think he was a B-17 pilot. And there's another guy there. He and his brother were from King City.
Copley?
Copley, I didn't know him, but this guy was a Portuguese family, I think. But I don't know that he took his primary training there, but he did fly. I think he was in the bomber command too. I don't remember for sure. Then there was Mazzini. He was an instructor during the war there.
Which Mazzini?
Hank?
Hank Mazzini?
I think it was Hank.
So while you were flying out of Mesa del Rey during the war and afterwards, were you ever amazed about the beauty of the Salinas Valley?
In some aspects, yeah. I was surprised to see the amount of areas of the ground that were actually farmed. That kind of hit me when I got there.
It was more than you thought or less than you thought?
More than I thought.
Okay.
Yeah. Now I guess it's even more than when I was there, but I hadn't seen the variety of crops that was growing there. When I was there, nobody grew lettuce in King City or Greenfield, or it was just sugar beets and beans and peas. They said you couldn't grow lettuce in the King City area
until they brought in all that water, huh? Well, thank you you have a very good memory.
No, I don't. I'm sorry.
Yes, you do. Thank you very much for those thoughts. Do you have one question?
A couple questions. So, do you know why Mesa del Rey became a training school? What was the reason for that? I've heard because of the number of flying days. One of the books, I think, says they had 300 flying days in a year. Do you know why?
That was part of the reason for locating it there, yeah. Because of the availability of good weather. They might not have taken into account too much the afternoon breeze.
Can you count or tell us the locations of the auxiliary fields that were associated?
There was one at Greenfield, north of town, and there were two south of town, one on the east side and one on the west side. That's about all I remember. The one at Greenfield had a map, and it was right and left traffic, like the airport. And the two at south of King City both had left-hand traffic, a single runway instead of a map. And I don't know what they called them. It was just.
And what were the purposes of those? Were they for touch and goes? Were they for emergency if they had trouble?
Solos, and primarily when you had a student ready for solo, you could take them down. They had little shacks where the instructors could get in and turn their cadet loose for a solo flight. Instead of having the congestion right at the main airport, that's why they had these auxiliary airfields. That was a lot of airplanes to put in the air.
So what happened to all the airplanes? I know some of them became crop dusting airplanes. Did they sell them? Do you have any idea?
Well, there's some Ryans, a few Ryans are still around. That guy that Harrison or whatever his name is, the actor, Harrison Ford.
Mm-hmm.
Harrison Ford.
Hmm?
Harrison Ford.
Was that his name?
Yeah.
He had one. In fact, that's what he
Crashed.
plunked down in that golf course a year or so ago. That was a PT-22. But a lot of the Stearmans were purchased by people that just wanted the airplane, and a lot of them went into the crop dusting business. A lot of Stearmans were in the crop dusting business.
One last question from me. I've seen a video of cadets coming to King City on the train and a little trolley picking them up and taking them out to the airport. Can you illuminate that a little bit?
I think it was a Model A Ford, and they just had little trailer things behind it. as much as I can remember. And, I think that's what it was. Painted yellow. I guess they didn't expect him to walk that far after.
This has been great.
Yeah, thank you for your memories of King City. Your life, your life had a big, was affected by your time in King City.
Yeah, my life was affected by my time in King City, yes, definitely. One of my better friendships was not there now, but he was there for a long time.
That's great.
Well, I have one more question, which is I should have asked you at the beginning. How did you get your name? How did you become Red Rider? Is there
I had hair.
red hair? Well, that's it. All right. I thought there was some trick to it, something the pilots have. So your hair. That's it. All right. Well, thank you. I think that's straightforward. But thank you very much. This was a pleasure to hear your stories and what you remember.
My pleasure. I appreciate that. I wish I had been able to do more.
Well, you've done plenty. I think it's going to hopefully inspire others to tell their stories and share and bring in more people who've done the same thing as you have. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job.
Yeah, that was
Thank you,
great.
Karen.
Yeah.